So now we've made it to the end of the first book, Philosophical Fragments. We've come to what Kierkegaard calls the moral before beginning the second of the two books bound together of Johannes Climacus. So what is the moral? He says, this project indisputably goes beyond the Socratic. It is an apparent at every point. Whether it is therefore more true than the Socratic is altogether a different question. Right? Whether or not you agree with Kierkegaard in his tome is a different question. His emphasis, his thought, his aim was to try to come up with whether or not there's a truth that's different than what Socrates would do, and to tease out these answers any bit more. One that cannot be decided, he said, whether it's more true in the same breath, inasmuch as a new organ has been assured here, faith. For Socrates, there was no issue of faith, and yet faith is essential to the understanding here in Philosophical Fragments. And a new presupposition, the consciousness of sin, and a new decision, the moment, and a new teacher, the God in time. Without these, I really would not have dared to present myself for inspection before that ironist who had been admired for millennia, whom I approach with as much ardent enthusiasm as anyone. Without bringing in these other terms and these different ideas, he says that there's no purpose in going beyond the Socratic because we would just assume Socrates is correct. But to go beyond Socrates, even when one nevertheless says essentially the same as he, only not as well, that, at least, is not Socratic. He says to go beyond him is not necessarily what I'm working on here, but it is what conclusion we've come to. So, what are your thoughts? What are your reflections on this work? You've now made it through a whole book. It's merely a pamphlet, as Kierkegaard mentions at the very beginning, where Johannes Climacus, his character, who he's writing it. And in it, we've encountered not only Socrates and Plato and Aristotle, but the works and thoughts of many others. We've talked about ideas of sensation, as understood through both Descartes and Bonaventure. Recently, he offhandedly makes a remark about Pascal. We also have seen several connections with the works of Hume, let alone Kant and Hegel. In this work, we see that Kierkegaard is engaging with many of the different philosophical and theological trends of his day, borrowing from Aquinas, amongst many, many others, the answer to the question of what is faith and how we should approach it. Asking conditions about what it is to be human, and is there notions of free will, as we'll see with Boethius and Augustine. Over and over again through this work, we're seeing his notion of existentialism, that you have to make a choice, that there's this leap of faith from not to be to be, that you are then taking on a new identity on the other side of this moment, of this paradox, that there's an advantage of what's going to be done. So you can see that there's a lot of little different topics in here. Areas that you can easily say, you know, I like this one, I didn't like that one. I didn't think his argument against Hegel was as effective, or his use of human, what was necessary, was odd and maybe an advantage. Maybe it makes Hume better. Can't make him much worse, right? And how we are supposed to proceed from in this way. So think over this work, and what were the key terms? What was the main philosophers that you saw him draw on? Was it Anselm or Aquinas? Was it Hegel or Hume or Kant? Right? There's all sorts of different elements and strands for you to pull out and to examine. And you get to then engage this idea of truth on your own at first hand, not just as mediated through me, since I am simply an occasion for you to encounter this work and to learn the truth, big T or little t, up to you, that is found within this.